This is going to be a lot of fun. I don't know where Michael is, but he's missing out. All right, new project, guys. What do we do every time?
Install a bunch of NPMs.
Install a bunch of NPMs. I only have one NPM. How many do you have? All right.
You use NPM, so don't you technically have multiple NPM?
Depends. Have I installed multiple versions of Node? No, I think I only have one currently. I generally kind of keep it to one, but yeah. Hey, there he is. At the end of the hour.
I'm actually genuinely confused. So you don't have to install a bunch of things, and I do?
No, we do. I just don't need to install multiple NPMs, right?
Oh, I was just saying like NPM this, NPM that. Okay.
I know. All right, so let's init, right? Init-y. Good. Let's install our dependencies. So let's look back at message board and see what we have. All right. We've just got this little assignment that essentially has one view, and then it looks like we're probably going to have to process a couple forms. Sound about right? All right, so what dependencies do you think that we're going to need for that or want?
Yes. Express.
All right. Let's do Express, EJS. What else? We're going to have some data persistence here, right? We're actually going to be storing something in Mongo. Okay, so we want Mongoose. All right, fair enough. Yeah, so if we wanted to show errors, we would be bringing in Flash, right? What else would we need, too, if we were going to do? We'd need Session, both of those guys. All right. Cool, so we've got our dependencies. Let's create our server file. What do we always do kind of in here? All this typical boilerplate. Oh, come on, man. There we go. I don't know why it doesn't happen right away. Okay, so let's bring in Express. Okay. Let's come down here and actually create our application, right? Express. Okay, and then lastly, I always have to do what?
Have the listen.
I've got to listen, right? Listen on a port. So app.listen. Let's just pick a port, 4400. All right, we're good to go. So if I want to run this right away, I should be okay. No problems here, right? Nodemon server.js. All right, we're all good. So what we want to do is we want to create this using the modularity that we were touching on earlier today. That way we sort of get in the habit of best practices, just keeping things split up a little bit. So what was the folder structure that we want to create here? So yeah, we'll have a server folder, and then we'll also have a client folder. Oh, I don't want to create it there. Okay, and then inside that client folder, yeah, I might have a static folder. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know, let's make it anyway. So let's put a static folder, just in case we want to add any styling and be super fancy. And then, what else do I want inside my client folder? The views, that would be good. Fair enough. All right, what do I want to put inside this server folder? Yeah, so we can have a config folder. What other folders can we have? A controllers folder, and then a models folder. All right, very good. So inside my server.js, let's just tell the server where we want to point the views, right? So we'll set the view engine, and then we'll say, where do we want to find those views? Okay, so how do I do that? Anthony, what's the syntax here?
App.set.
Nice.
View engine. Then EJS.
Good. Now what's the other thing I want to do? Now I want to tell it where the folder is. Okay, so what's the syntax there?
App.set.
Okay.
Views folder.
Views. Okay.
The directory.
And now we need to actually put in the path to that views folder. All right, good deal. So let's do that. Dir name. plus client/views. All right, very good. So what else are we going to want to use in our application? We also know that we're going to have some forms that we're submitting here, right? Okay, so how am I going to make it so that my back-end code can actually see that form submission data?
URL and code.
Yeah, so let's get the whole thing. Ryan, what am I going to put here on line 7?
Sorry, I was tuned out just for a second there.
Tune back in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was
All right, no, that's okay. Don't worry about it. So I want to make sure that I can actually read my data that gets submitted in these forms.
So you guys said you do. I guess at this point you can do your app.get, just say your request because you have your const, your app.set. Sorry, I'm kind of running back.
So remember, we're not going to do any app.gets here inside server.js. Where is all that stuff?
Oh yeah, it can be your controller.
That's going to be inside the routes now.
Yeah. Sorry,
Because we're
I'm not
keeping
done
it
with
nice
this,
and
so.
modular, right? Okay. But in terms of just being able to read our form data, what do I need to add in here? Michael?
Mongoose? Require mongoose?
No.
EJ.
No, this doesn't depend on.
I'm just gonna list the things and everything.
All right. Little help there, Anna?
The app.use express URL encoding.
Okay, good. Let's add some middleware, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay. All right, URL encoded. Okay. So sometimes if you guys get into a situation where, again, you're trying to create some new document and it's just not working, you keep getting errors, and maybe it's saying this path was required and you're not providing it. Chances are probably that your rec.body is undefined. Okay? Which means you're trying to create a document off of nothing, off of an undefined variable, and that's never going to work. So what I would recommend in that case, if you get into that situation, just console log rec.body. Okay? Make sure that it's not undefined. If it's undefined, what that means is that you have not included this. Right? All right. Good deal. So that should enable us to actually see the form data. Next, what I would argue we should probably do is jump into our config and maybe handle our mongoose, and then probably jump into our models, right? Okay, because that's kind of where everything's going to build off of. If I get my models right, then I can probably debug anything else that's going to go wrong. But if we have to go back and make a lot of changes to the model, then we might have to change other parts of our code too. All right, so let's go inside this config folder here. What files do I want to have in here? Anyone? Okay, yeah, let's have our routes file. What else? Mongoose. All right. So inside Mongoose, what dependency should I probably require? Mongoose itself. Mongoose. Okay. And then what are we generally going to do inside this Mongoose file? We want to establish a connection with our database, right? So how do we do that? Make the connection. What's the syntax there? .connect. So we're going to invoke this connect function. All right. So let's pass in the connection string. This is where our DB is. Localhost. And let's see. Message board demo. Okay. Now we have this second argument here where we can provide some options. This is where we provide the options to get rid of those deprecation warnings, right? So use new URL parser is one of them. And then unified topology. Okay. Have you guys come across the use, find, and modify yet?
Yeah.
As well? Okay. Yeah, so this tends to be required as well. If we're going to do find by ID and update, or just find one and update, you might have to provide this as well. Use, find, and modify. And I believe we usually set that to false, right? You guys been saying that to true?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. All right. Let's just stick with it for now. All right, so we've connected to our MongoDB, right? What's the other thing that we usually want to do from this file? For anyone who's gone through modularization.
I said that to false, by the way.
Okay, so you agree with this?
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't
Fair
before,
enough.
but now I do.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so what else do we want to do inside this mongoose file?
Require the path or the is it the export?
Is what the export? What do you mean?
Um,
Oh, you're asking should we export something from here?
yeah.
We don't necessarily have to. What we can do here is when we require this, it's just going to run this code.
Okay.
Okay. But we're not exporting a function or an object or something like that. We don't need to. Yeah, but I'm not going to do it inside this file, right?
Want to require the requirements.
Yes, but what are they?
Require all the models.
Yeah, let's require our models, right? Okay. Very good. Yeah, that we haven't made yet. That's a really good point. So let's say we're going to require, so if I go up one level into my models directory, and then I'm going to require, say, the message model, which I haven't made yet. So what would happen if I start requiring this directly from my server right now, as it stands?
Undefined.
Undefined.
Oh, you mean without the modules?
So we're probably going to get an error here on line 9, right? Because it's trying to require some file that we haven't even created. Okay. So to deal with that, let's go and create that file first so that we don't kind of send our app offline. All right. So let's go inside our models folder here and just create this message model. Okay, what's this going to look like? So what do I need to bring in here when I'm making a model?
Probably got to bring in mongoose at some point.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. Mongoose, mongoose. All right. Fair enough. Now, when I'm making a model, what's the first thing I need to create? Does anyone remember?
The schema.
The schema, right? All right. So let's say we'll call this message schema. Schema. And what's the syntax of this? New mongoose.schema. Okay. And then I'm going to close this out real quick, and we'll take a quick glance at the requirements here to see what we have to have, right? So we're going to have messages, each one of which will have a name and a message, right? And then we'll also have comments that go with those messages, each one of which will have a name and a comment. All right. So let's go about creating that inside here, inside our schema, right? So I'm going to have a name, and we'll say the type of that is going to be a string. Say required true, and then again, the second thing that you can pass in the array would be what would be the message if somebody fails this validation, right? Please enter a name. Okay. Now, we also want to have some content here. So I'm going to call, oops, how did I do that? I'm going to call it text though. You guys probably called it message or something. So then inside your template, you're probably going to end up saying message.message.
Yeah.
I find that very annoying. Yeah, it's like, what? All right, so let's just call it text. Or better yet, maybe we could call it content. Does Does that make sense for you guys? All right. Let's call it content, and then we'll say the type of this is going to be string again. Required true. Please enter a message. All right. Good deal. What's the other thing that I'm going to have? So I'm going to design this thing so that we only use one schema. You guys may have used two, but I'm going to do it so that we only have one. And that's kind of the cool thing about Mongo is that you can nest things. All right. So what else are we going to have here if I'm not going to have a second schema? Another model?
The comment or
Schema inside of it.
So yeah, we're going to have a comments array inside here. Okay. So we'll say comments, and this is going to be an array. And then inside that, I'm going to have the quote schema of these comments. All right. So I'll have the same sort of thing. I'll have a name, type, string, and then I'll just duplicate this up here.
What is the benefit of just nesting it without making another schema?
Oh jeez, where did I get myself into? things have gotten out of hand here. Yeah, so what it's gonna here's what it's gonna do. I will now only have one collection. I'll have a messages collection, and that's it. I won't have a comments collection as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, if I wanted to have a comments collection for some reason, I may not want to do it this way. Like,
so you can access comments through messages.
Mhm.
That's fine. Very cool.
So right now, that's sort of the path that we'll get to them. We'll find a message that we're interested in, and then we'll get to the comments that are within that message. Right? Okay.
Totally see how that's very useful.
Yeah, so we've got our name, and then the content is going to be exactly the same. So I'm really just going to grab this guy right here and paste that in down here. Okay. Yeah, so again, our comments array is going to have this schema inside of it. All right. Now, what's the other argument that I want to pass when I'm creating a new schema using Mongoose? It's going to be an object, right? And we usually tell it that we want to have some timestamps. Yeah. All right. True. Okay. So we're almost there. What else do we need to do inside this message model file?
Those timestamps be applied to the comments as well?
I don't think they are, but we'll double check that. Yeah, we can open up the Mongo shell. So that might be another situation in which you may not want to do it this way if you needed to have a little bit more granular control over, the subdocuments. All right, fair enough. So what else do we need to do at the bottom of this model file? Does Mongoose know about our model yet? No, so we need to register it, right? Okay, how do we do that? .model. So I'm going to invoke this function. I'm going to pass it the name of my model, which we'll say is just message, and then the actual message schema. I've been hearing some questions about this third argument, so I'm just going to touch on it really briefly. If you wanted the name of the collection to be something custom, you can specify it here. Okay? By default, it will take this model name that we've given it, message, lowercase that completely, and then just add an S to it. That will be the name of our collection, which I'm totally fine with, if you guys are.
Is there a reason you didn't have to use cons? I mean, obviously there's a reason, but why didn't you have to use cons? That's a better question in front of my original model on this one.
Because here, I'm not actually using this reference anywhere, right? I'm not exporting anything from this file.
Right.
But in a different part of our code, we will actually need to get a reference to this model. How do we do that?
With cons.
With cons, yeah. And then when we call this function, mongoose.model, will I do it with 2 arguments or only 1?
I'm gonna say 1.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will only, when I call this with only 1 argument, it's going to reach in and grab a reference to that model for me. All right. Yeah. Okay, so now we're in pretty good shape, right? We could actually require this file from our server without running the risk of any kind of errors. Let's see if we can. So if we go up here, and I'm just going to require, I need to go into my server folder, right? And then inside my config folder, mongoose. And let's open up our terminal to make sure we don't break anything. Good, no breakages. So that's pretty nice. All right. Now what else are we going to need here? So we've required our mongoose file, which is also bringing in our models and stuff. What did we used to have inside of our server.js that was kind of making it a little bit long? The routes. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's say I want to add my routes. And again, this file doesn't exist yet, but that's going to be, whoops, that's going to be inside our server folder, inside that config folder, and then routes, right? Okay. So let's go in and actually create that file. So up here inside my config, I've got this empty file right now. Excellent. Before we do anything, let's talk real quick about what we're going to export from the routes file. You guys remember?
Functions.
A function. Okay. So we're going to take in an this function is going to take in an application, and then we're going to apply all of our routes to that app, right? Okay. So how many routes do you think that we're going to have? Again, we only have the 1 page, and we have maybe 2 forms we got to handle. So that's only 3 routes, right? Not too bad. Okay. Let's just get those things set up, and then maybe I'll comment them out in a second. But let's say app.get, the index route. What might we want to run there? Some kind of index function, right? But I don't have any functions yet. Where am I going to get those from? From the controller, right? So if I say something like, let's say messages controller, and where are we going to find that? So we're going to have to go up 1 level, right? And then we're going to go inside of our controllers folder. And then we'll have a messages controller. Okay, so inside here, let's assume that we've written an index method, right? So what am I going to type in here?
Messages controller dot index.
Right. Index. Okay. Another route I might want to have here is one where I can create a new message, right? Okay, so what route might that be? Maybe we'll say app.post/messages, and then we'll say messages controller, and then we'll just call it create for now. Okay, what's the third route that I'm going to have to create here? Comments, right? Good. So if I go app.post, and the route that I'm going to create here is going to be /messages, and then I'm going to reference the particular message's ID, or that particular message has an ID, right? So I'm going to say :ID, and then we'll say comments, and then we'll say messages controller dot create comment. All right. So let's ask ourselves, if we require this file right now from our server.js, will it work? No, why not?
You need the controller.
This part, right? Yeah, exactly. So now we got to keep moving and get our controller ready to go. So I'm going to make this controller. We'll call it messages. Okay. And then what am I going to need to bring in here? Because I need to interact with my message model. So how can I do that? I kind of heard it a little louder. Sure. We need to require mongoose again, right? Mongoose. Okay. And then how am I going to get a reference to my my message model again? This is your chance, Ryan.
That was the
Const.
URL. Yeah. So
Don't forget about const.
Yeah. Oh, it's when you use const messages.
So I'm going to say message because that's the name of our model, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how do I get that?
Somebody want to pitch in with me here?
Yeah, a little help here. Dot model, right? But here I'm only going to call it with one argument, which would be the name of the model. Okay. So we'll just call it with message. All right. Very good. Now from this file, do you guys remember what kind of thing I'm going to be exporting? Oh yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
One more time. Why you only have to pass one argument? That's because it's already in the other one that's going.
Because yeah, in the other file we actually registered this model, so we made Mongoose aware of it. This time we're actually just trying to get a reference back to it. Okay. Now I'm just trying to get a reference to my message model.
I don't know why I got this stupid. I got confused on when I said const messages. Then I was thinking when he said pass one, does that mean I don't need mongoose.model? I just put message there. I just got that. Obviously it's C now, but I was I just got tripped up.
It's okay. It's a little weird the first couple times you see it. Don't feel
I'm
bad
second
about
guessing
that.
myself.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, so this file actually is going to export something, right? Does anyone remember what kind of thing we're going to export? It's going to be an object, right, that has some different key value pairs that are corresponding to the different controller methods that we want, right? So we'll say module.exports equals an object. And then in there, I need to have some different things. So according to my routes file, I've got an index route. I also have a create route, and I also have a create comment route, right? So let's say my index function is going to take in a request and a response. Actually, I'm going to put an underscore in this guy. Res. Okay, and what am I typically going to do in my index?
Render.
Yeah, but before I render, I actually want to get some data, no? Because when I render that page, I need to have a reference to all my messages, otherwise, yeah. So let's go grab them, right?
It's not using it.
All right.
It doesn't get like this.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Cool.
No, this is a shorthand. You do not need a colon after this. So if you're going to include a function as part of an object like that, you can do it like this. All right. Okay, so let's go and grab all of our messages because we want to pass those along to the template, right? So we'll say messages or message.find. Now, what am I going to do? So let's ask ourselves real quick. When we invoke this find method, what does it return?
All the messages.
Trick question. No. Anyone else? Anthony knows. What does it return?
Promise.
A promise. Okay? This is going to return us a promise, which is basically saying, hey, I'll try to get you those messages as soon as I can. Okay? All right, so there's been some question about, what is this whole .then thing and .catch. Now we're going to kind of touch on it a little bit. So this promise object is a special object that has some different properties to it. So the status of a promise when it's first created is that it will be in pending state. Okay? So it's trying to go and get our data right now. But if I do something immediately after this, like let's say I just set, what if I went like this and I say const messages equals that, and then right after that I tried to render the template using those messages. Would that work?
Say I haven't got it. No,
No. Why not?
because it's still pending.
Because, yeah, all I have right here is a promise of some data coming back, and it's in a pending state right now. So if I try to send those to the template to render, that's not going to work, right? That promise has not yet been resolved. So I can't just move on to the next line of my code and start trying to use it right away. Instead, what do I need to do? How can I handle these promises?
.then.
I can attach a call to the then method. What the heck? Yeah, I forgot the dot, didn't I? All right. Cool, so now I'm going to pass this callback, and what is the callback going to have access to? So now, if we get inside this callback here, that means that our promise has been resolved. So what should we have now?
Object.
We should have an array of all of our messages, right? That'll be nice. So we've got these messages, and I can use an arrow function to do something with them. So what do I want to do with the messages? Now I want to send them to the template, right? Okay. So syntactically, we're going to say res.render, and then I'm going to render an index template. And then what am I going to pass along to that as context? Yeah, so what I called it here was just messages, right? So I want my template to have a reference to this messages variable so that I can then just iterate through them on the page. Let's do it. Just put in messages here. All right. How about .catch? What if something goes wrong?
Oh, it's console log mom, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean we can console log it. If we're using rec flash or flash, we could potentially pass them along so the next page rendering would have access to
Flash
them. Right?
messages forever achievers. I just.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. But let's talk about, so really when we're just going and fetching all of our messages, probably we're not going to run into an error unless maybe our MongoDB is not running. That could definitely cause an issue, right? All right. So for now, let's just console log it. So we'll just drop in console.log. Is anyone confused as to why I'm not invoking that, or yes? Okay. Connor, why am I not invoking that?
Because you're passing console log as a callback.
Right. So it's not going to actually be invoked until we do hit an error. When we hit an error, then this function will be invoked.
So
Okay.
if it's getting the object, it'll log the object. But what else would it log if it's not getting the object?
Undefined.
So like, what are all the things that it can log?
No, if we hit an error, there will definitely be something to log, without question. The error object may or may not have a message associated with it. Maybe that's what you were thinking about. But there will definitely be an error object that we can log. Definitely. Yes.
You don't have to put a reference for the error, like ERR?
Yeah, I always have to put.
Yeah,
ERR,
so let's talk
error.
about this. This is ultimately equivalent to me saying error and then actually passing that in.
Oh man.
Do you see how the other way is a lot more succinct though?
Yeah.
Albeit maybe a little bit less explicit because we haven't, said anything about an error or whatever.
But either way.
Either way, yeah, this would result in the same thing. We'll just console log out our error. And sometimes I'll opt with less code. But if it's less readable to you guys, you don't have to do that. Absolutely. All right. So we're in pretty good shape here, right? All we're doing is we're going and finding our messages, which is returning what, guys? A chorus? Everyone.
I swear.
It's returning a promise. All right, and then when we invoke the then method, that means that we pass in a callback function that we want to run as soon as our promise has been resolved, as soon as we get back that data from the database. Okay? And then, of course, once we have it, we're just going to render our template, and then pass in those messages that we got back from Mongoose. All right, so we're almost ready here. However, have we created an index template? A lot of little steps to this thing, right? All right, let's create ourselves an index template. Index.ejs. Drop in some boilerplate here. H1 message board. Okay, excellent. So assuming that I've gotten some messages here back from my database, what am I going to want to do with those things? According to our assignment here, it looks like we're just going to be looping through them, right? So here's a message, here's another one. However, we do have a form up top, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way, right, so that we can create new messages. All right, so we'll say form. My action, we'll say, is going to be, does anybody remember what I put for the route to create a message? It was just messages, exactly. And then my method would be post. Oops. Okay, and then here we'll have the name. And then in the second case, I think I'm going to create a, oh man, I don't know what that's for. And then in the second case, I'm just going to create a text area because I want them to be able to enter potentially a really long message, right? Message. Okay, so we'll say text area. Wow. Got all this stuff. So let's call it content to match up with our schema, right? All right. And then after this, we need to include a submit button. Submit. All right, and let's see if we can actually get this thing rendered. So again, we were going to require the routes. What's the other thing that I have to do after I require the routes? I need to actually invoke those routes that came back against my app variable. All right. And then before everything blows up, I want to check my routes one more time. And notice that we have a couple other functions that we haven't yet built, so I'm just going to comment those out for right now. Comment those guys out. Now let's include this. Check our terminal here. Everything restarted, so we should be okay. And then we're on 4400. Oh, this is nothing. This is a good day.
That's fine.
Yeah, you should have seen it the other day. An absolute nightmare. Okay, cool. So we've got our form going, right? That's kind of nice. So the other thing that we want to do is we want to loop through all of our messages. Okay, how am I going to do that? Does anyone remember the syntax for this? Yeah, so we're going to use the carets, right? Good.
For parentheses.
So we can say for const message of messages. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to close out this top one here, come down here, finish it off. I know this is maybe a little bit awkward to type this stuff out. Believe me, it's awkward for me too.
So I got really thrown off on it just took me a while to figure that out. I just had to give them a yell. But the way it ends like that, it's like each line has to have an ending. It's just kind of confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sort of like we're writing JavaScript, but then we're sort of including it in separate tags, right?
It's like each line has to have its own.
Yeah.
Wait, so Morley, this is simply for the error messages.
No, this is for looping through our messages on our message board. Yeah. Okay. So inside this loop, let's just put a div, and then we're going to have a couple things. We've got to put the name of the poster, right? So that'll be a p tag, and I'll just say name. How do I output that person's name?
You have to use the percentage and caret again Equals.
and then equals this time, right?
Message.name or messages.name, however you word it. Message.name.
Yeah, let's be careful here. It's not going to be messages.name because message is an array.
Right.
So messages does not have a name property to it, right? Okay, so message.name. All right, and then I'm going to duplicate this guy here to have the actual content. So we'll just say this is message, and then this would be message.content, right? Okay, so if I go back and try to render this template, well, it's still rendering, so we're good there. Now I don't have any messages yet, right? So that's why we don't see anything down there. All right, cool. So what's the next thing we probably need to do to make this form work?
Create some messages. Populate some stuff in the database.
Have we made the post request?
Wait a minute. I have to populate the database to make the form work?
Oh, not to make.
No, not right. Okay.
Have we created the
Yeah,
post request
set up
on
our-
submit?
So we set up sort of a stub in here. We said that we were going to have a route for messages to create messages, right? But we just hadn't created the actual logic to do that. So let's go back inside of our controller and make the logic where we can create a new message. All right, so I have this index method. What if I come down here and start trying to, oh wow, what happened here? What went wrong? Why am I seeing red here? I need a comma, yeah. So if I don't separate these things with commas, we're going to get errors. All right. Great. So here I'm going to take in a request and a response, right? And then how am I going to create a new message?
Can you start with
Give me one.
Fonts, message equals new message.
I'm going to do it a little bit simpler than that. Remember the other way I showed you guys, the create method? Yeah, so we can say message dot create, and then what am I going to pass in here? Rec.body, right? Because that should have our name and our content. Oops. Rec.body. Okay, what's this going to return? Everybody? A promise. I promise I'll get that thing inserted into the database for you. One of these days, right? All right, cool. So what do we want to do next then? Maybe that then. Maybe we can also just do, here's an idea. We can do a .catch if something goes wrong, right? And let's log that out. And then, remember I showed you guys finally the other day? Does anyone remember that? All right, so this would run whether or not we hit any kind of an error, right? Because what we're automatically going to want to do is just redirect them back to the index. All right, so let's say I'm just going to create a little arrow function that will res redirect back to the index route. Okay, now that this function is in place, I can actually go uncomment that spot in my routes to make it live. So let's just uncomment this guy here. And now I should be able to send a post request to that messages route, right? So let's try to do it. Let's try to send a message. Ryan's going to send a message. Hey, Michael. What's up? Okay. There it goes. It appeared right away. That's kind of nice. All right. We'll send another one. Tom's going to send a message.
Spend more time on the platform.
Keanu. What's up, man? Okay. All right. So we're in pretty good shape. We're able to create messages. What's going to happen if I try to submit this with nothing in it? Well, nothing on here, but in my console, what should have happened? I should be seeing my errors, right? Let's open it up. Uh-oh. So we've got please enter a message, and we also have please enter a name. Enter your name, right? Okay. So again, if we were trying to display these on the front end using Flash, we could do so. We could basically set these errors by calling rec.flash. And then we'd be able to access them on the next request. Okay? You guys remember how Flash works? We can only access it on the very next request, and then it's gone. Okay? So it's like a temporary session. But I don't want you guys to worry too much about displaying errors on these pages, because later on we're going to be using Angular, and this is going to work a little bit differently. All right? Don't get too caught up in
I was getting
showing the errors. Okay. All right, good. So we've got that going. The only other thing that we need to be able to create, though, are these comments to go with specific messages, right? All right. So let's do that. Let's go back to our template here. Here it is. Okay. And then inside this loop, I want to have an individual form so that I can post more comments to this message, right? Actually, before we even do the form, what else do I need to loop through according to this wireframe? I need to loop through the comments themselves, right? Okay. So let's do that. So when we're looping here, let's just create another div underneath. And then in there, now I'm going to say %, and what's this going to look like? So now I'm trying to loop through the comments that are connected to this specific message, right? What's the syntax there? Comment of message.comments, right? Okay, excellent. And this guy here, come down here, open this up, end it. I should create a snippet for that. All right, so inside that, we basically want to have this same sort of thing, right? So let me just paste this in here. And then instead of message.name and message.content, what's that going to be? Comment.name and then comment.content. All right. Okay, so let me just save that. We'll refresh our page and make sure that nothing wild happened here. Still working, right? Okay. Now the other thing that I want to do is also provide a form here so that somebody can enter a new comment for this particular message, right? So let's do that. Does that come after we loop through the comments? It does, right? Yeah. So it comes after we actually loop through the comments. We'll just put a new form down here. And because I'm lazy, I'm gonna swipe this. Yeah. All right, here we go. Paste that guy in. I do need to change the route, however, the form action, right? What did we say the action should be? It's going to look something like this. It's going to be messages, then slash the ID of the message, and then slash comments. Okay? So let me close this out there. All right, so how do I output the message ID? No. A little help. We want to use that angle bracket again, right? And then the equal sign means that I'm trying to output something. Okay, so what am I going to put in there? Very good, underscore ID. So why are we using underscore ID?
That's how it is in your database.
That's how it's coming out of Mongo. Yep, exactly. All right? And then the other thing that I wanted in my path there is just comments. Because I'm trying to add a comment to this specific message ID, right? All right. Good deal. So that's all set. Let's make sure that this is actually rendering the way that we want it to. Yeah, I should. You're absolutely right. All right. Comment. All right. So our form is rendering, so that's good. Now I need to get into the logic of being able to handle the form submission, right? So I go back to my controller, and the other function that I needed to create was just called create comment, right? So let's come down here, create comment, rec res again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the message that I'm interested in. So I'm going to use this method that Mongoose gives me called find by ID and update. So let's say message dot find by ID and update. Now the first argument we need to provide it is actually the ID of the message that I'm trying to update. Okay, where am I going to get that from? No, it's coming in through the route params. Yes, exactly. So I'm going to say yeah. Okay, rec.params.id. Where did that ID come from? Let's look at our routes. So here, I called it ID, right? Sometimes people will try to sort of, I don't want to say cheat, but they'll put an underscore in front of this ID just to kind of give themselves a little crutch. But no, I don't think he does. I mean, I don't know. You don't do that, do you? No. All right. But sometimes people might do that just because, hey, sometimes when things are coming directly from Mongo, I got to reference them as underscore ID, right? So they give themselves a little out here by using that underscore to be like, yeah, okay, I can always reference it in the same way.
What's wrong with that?
It's kind of like calling.
It's just kind of, it's sort of like not understanding things as well as you can, I guess, is what I would say. So this name that we're using right here needs to match what we use in the rec.params. It needs to be exactly the same. Okay. So if in my routes file I said underscore ID, I'd have to say underscore ID here too. All right.
I actually tried it using the underscore ID, but it didn't work for me. So that's something.
Well, how about that? Yeah.
Not on this particular one.
No, that's fine. All right. So that's that. So that's the first argument we need to provide it. What's the second argument we got to provide? Does anyone know? Has anyone used find by ID and update? Oh, you're in for a world of fun. I just think that the syntax of this one is a lot better than the regular find one and update because we know we're finding it by ID every time, right? All right. So the second thing is actually going to be the actual update object that we're providing.
That's what you need to use find and modify set to false for.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So the update object is going to look something like this. I need to say that I'm pushing to my comments array, right? Okay. And then what am I going to push to that comments array? Probably just rec.body. Because what rec.body is going to have is it's going to have a name and a content, right? Okay, cool. Now, the third argument that you guys probably haven't seen is another options argument that we can provide. So, by default, the document that this is going to return when the promise is resolved will be the old document, the one that's not been modified yet. I don't really like that so much. Doesn't that seem weird? All right, so we can specify new true, means that we actually want to get a reference to the new document, the modified one. Okay. Then I also want to say that I want my validators to run. So sometimes I believe they don't run by default in find by ID and update. So you just need to say run validators and set that to true. Because I don't want somebody to be able to slide a comment through with no content or no name or something like that, right? I want to at least validate that part. All right, so that's good. What is this going to return? Find by ID and update. All these methods return the same thing. What is it? A promise. Okay. So let's do the same sort of thing. If we run into an error here, let's log it out. Okay. And then my finally means I just want to take them back to the index route, right? Let's show them the updated page that has their comment inserted. res.redirect /. Okay, good deal. Now if I go back to my routes, I haven't yet saved this, but our create comment method is finished, so we should be able to save it with no problems in our server. Indeed, we're restarting and everything's still running. Let's see if we can post a comment from one of these guys. So let's say this, or let's say Brian. This is a comment for Keanu. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Good call. Okay, so now we have this comment here. Now, the formatting's pretty terrible. So, do you guys want to do something with the styling before we finish this? Keep it like super bare bones and
Just throw
skeletal.
some bootstrap in
Oh yeah, could do that, I
there.
guess.
Hard.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too hard.
Connor rolling sense.
Yeah, it's like so cliche, right? Bootstrap.
You just align the comments to the right.
Yeah, I could do something like that. So let's just create a quick class here. So for our comments, oops. Or our comments. Okay, so our comments that we're looping through here, let's just give that a class, right? Or we'll give this guy a class, which will be the container div for all the comments, right? So let's say class equals comments container. Okay, now I need to link that here in the style sheet, right? Link, and then we'll go /css/style.css. So I don't think we did static stuff inside our server, did we? All right. So what do I need to do there? App.use express.static. Okay. Now I need to direct where the static files are, right? So it'll be dir name plus, we'll go inside of our client folder and then to the static folder, right? Dunder. Inside our static folder, we don't have anything, so I'll just create a file, style.css. And then inside that style.css, let's just create a little comments container. And then I'll just say margin left of 50 pixels. And then it won't work. What happened there? Oh. MIME type? What did I do wrong here? So I'm saying I want to look for static files inside the client. Oh. I see what happened. I need to put a subfolder, right? It should be a subfolder of CSS.
I called that today. So what you said what'll go in this, and I said, oh, I didn't know if there had to be a folder within it.
So there doesn't have to be. This is totally flexible. I don't have to have it this way, but I put it that way in the link. So it was looking for the file and it couldn't find it. All right. So let's go back. All right, now we're good.
So I was wrong, but still kind of right.
Wrong, but kind of. Yeah, okay, so name. Oh, who haven't I gotten in here? Long. You're up, man. Another comment for Keanu. Cool. So now we've got our comments displaying a little bit off the left, so at least we can see that these are the comments, right? And these are the messages. Oh, and that shouldn't even say message, right?
That's what we said, yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's another comment.
Well, right here, right? Yeah. Comment. There we go. That's message board. Any questions?
So can you check if the timestamps
Oh yeah, we did want to check that. That's right. Go into my Mongo shell. Yeah, I'm guessing not to. So let's say use message for demo, and then we'll say db.messages.find. Oops. .pretty. Oh jeez. Yeah, so we don't have timestamps, but we do get IDs on those. If that's some.
Can you put that timestamp object again in there and then undo it?
If you had it as a separate schema. Yeah. So I guess like mainly what you want to think about on the nesting schemas is, am I ever going to need to access the comments by themselves? In other words, like, do I need to search through my comments by ID or something like that? Could be kind of tricky if you had it nested the way that we built it today. Or if you needed to have timestamps on them too, that could be an issue. But at least as far as pushing into the comments array, that part was pretty nice, right? You see how simple this was versus the other way that I think they were showing you in the platform, which is you need to first create the comment, and then when that thing resolves, then you need to push that into the message, right? By updating that individual message. So it's kind of a two-step process. And then you've got nested promises. Ugh. not too fun to deal with. All right. Any questions? I'm gonna stop the recording. Yes, Tom.
I'm doing the comment for this assignment, and I'm doing two different
Schemas.
schemas.
Right.
So and then you check around and saw people doing something like
I presume it was comment.create, and then once you had the, and then inside your .then, you would take that comment and push it to the message. Is that roughly how you were seeing it or doing it? That's how they had it in the platform.
yeah, they have something called like tab schema tab object, and then they connect to
Tab.schema?
no tab column schema.
Type.
Oh,
Oh, type. Okay.
tab of object ID. Now that just like really try to create a
Oh,
relationship.
right. Okay. So they were basically pushing in object IDs into that comments array, right? Okay. That's essentially what happens when you create the comment and you push it in, right? Isn't it the exact same thing? If you were to look at it inside your Mongo shell, you would see just a number of different object IDs. Has anyone looked at that yet?
I saw the whole object.
Oh, you did? It was completely nested in there? And it was also in the comments collection as well, separately?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the other thing that's it's a little funky, is that now you've got something in two different places, right? You've got it nested inside your message, but you also have it separately in your comments collection. Now here we only have it in one place, which is good. Right.
The timestamps.
Cool. Yeah, no time. Man, you're really big on those timestamps. I hear you though. I mean, it's something that we could manually add to. So if we wanted to add some things to rec.body, we could basically grab the current timestamp and put that in there if we really wanted it.
So
Okay.
is it possible to connect to two collections at the same time?
If
Say-
you have a separate schema, yeah. If it's not a separate schema, though, it's not going to go in a separate collection. It
Okay.
would only be in this one.
Also, the connect is only for one database. And
Yeah,
then
so in
schema
this,
will be
so the
connected.
way that we built it today, we only have one collection, that's it.
Okay.
But it does handle the situation, like we never have to worry about our data coming out of sync, where maybe the comment was one way in the comments collection and then we edited it inside the message. Now they're not even the same. Anyway.
So I'm looking at the Mongoose talks.
Mhm.
And